Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
And gentlemen, welcome to the program today. My goodness, what a show that we have for you today. And you want to bear with me here. You want to stick with me because, sometimes I don't understand how things can be coordinated the way they are. Certainly not by men. I sometimes I'm just absolutely in awe. Yesterday, and it wasn't even I didn't even really plan for this, but yesterday I talked about the tax relief task force, and I told you why I thought they were not going to actually deliver on tax cuts. And I essentially was reading the eulogy of the task force in terms of just, anything I hope it would accomplish that's positive for us. And one of my key pieces of evidence was the very first meeting in an audio recording of Speaker of the House Jeremy Gillum saying that this task force is not there to cut taxes. And so what else do we need to know, right? And this is all in the context of, people, this program's negative and that's negative and you're negative and everything else. And all I'm doing is telling the truth. That's what I was telling the Greene County Republicans last night. How do I tell you these things, these terrible things that they're doing in your name without it sounding like it's a bunch of negativity? These are the facts. And I'm sorry that ASA and the establishment don't like them. Yeah, by the way, that's good, Joe. That is the topic of our Wednesday weekly video over at Patreon. But listen, I want to get to this news, these developments here. So, yesterday, do you know who met yesterday? And I promise you I had no idea they were meeting yesterday. I dropped the ball on it. My apologies. You know who met yesterday? The task force on taxes met yesterday. Can you show them the schedule, Joe? So pull the screen up. This is the schedule for yesterday. I didn't even know that they were meeting. The Tax Reform and Relief Legislative Task Force met yesterday, October the 3rd. They met at, it says 1:30. So last night, I'm driving home from the Greene County Republican Committee, and I get a phone call. And I'll never tell who it was. But it was somebody who was in this task force meeting. Not just people that are on the task force, but there are others. You can go even look up who was in attendance, who's not on the task force, that's a state representative and a state senator and everything else. And they told me that the consultant that they hired actually said in front of this task force, the consultant they hired, who is a man by the name of Randy Bauer, testified about the business rankings, and we're talking about where Arkansas ranks in this study or that study on business-friendly states. And you know what he said? He insinuated that Arkansas their goal shouldn't be to be number one in business rankings in the country because that would be bad for our citizens, meaning they wouldn't have the money that they need to run the welfare programs. Now, that was the first red flag. So, you know what I did? When I heard that, I said, that's weird. That's very strange. Who is this Randy Bauer guy? Go to the next slide. This is the PDF that you can find on the Arkansas Legislative website. This is what they went over, the State of Arkansas Tax Relief and Reform Legislative Task Force. You scroll down here, and we see this is PFM Consulting, or PFM Group, Public Financial Management Group. Randy Bauer, or Randall Bauer, you can see it here. He joined PFM in 2005, where he has led numerous state and local government finance and revenue-related projects. These project clients have included the states of Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, Kansas, New York, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, and Washington, as well as the cities of Baltimore, Cincinnati, Colorado Springs, St. Louis, and Washington, D.C. Prior to joining PFM, Mr. Bauer served for nearly 7 years as the budget director for the state of Iowa and 11 years in senior tax and budget staff roles for the Iowa State Senate. I'll get to his Iowa roots in a moment. So I thought to myself, I wonder if Randall Bauer this guy that Jim Hendren has picked to be the consultant that's going to advise the tax force on how they're supposed to cut taxes, although we now know that it's not about tax cuts, right? It's about tax reform, and they get to define whatever that is. And we all know it's not going to be less money going to the government, not going to actually shrink government. So I said, hey, does Randall Bauer have a Twitter? And the answer is yes. This is what he looks like. This is Randall Bauer. And it's his Twitter feed, and just in the past 24 hours, has been fascinating. Let's look at some of his tweets, shall we? Here's the first one we can find. Randall Bauer. He is retweeting a flashback of President Obama concerning Colin Kaepernick taking a knee. By the way, I've taken as many screenshots as I can. There's like 30,000 of these tweets. I do expect Randall Bauer's Twitter to go locked pretty soon. If it's not going to be locked or shut down, I just feel like he's going to want it to be private. Because I'm going to keep digging. So just FYI, I'm going to keep going through, or he'll start deleting the tweets. But we've got several screenshots. Randall Bauer writes, "It is the difference between light and dark. Only Obama is light and Trump is dark." This is the man advising our legislators on how we should proceed with tax policy in this state. Somebody who is criticizing Donald Trump and essentially taking the side of Colin Kaepernick, who takes a knee for the national anthem. Now, that's just the first thing. Let's actually get to tax policy. Let's go to another tweet, Joe. No, this is another dig at Trump. Mr. Randall Bauer writes, multiple failures on repeal and replace and travel ban, no clear path on tax reform. Are Trump backers getting tired of winning? So he's clearly an anti-Trumper. Anti-Trumper. So, way to go, Jim Hendren. It took you 4 months to find a consultant for the task force, and this is who you bring us. Congratulations. I don't know, does Jim Hendren have Google? Did he not know who this guy was? Or is this just who ASA demanded that we have? Somebody who's not going to cut the size of government, but is going to find a way to just let them spin it that they're cutting the size of government or cutting taxes, but they're really going to keep the amount of money that they have, and they'll get more of it, trust me. What's the next tweet that we have up here? Tax cuts are not the same as tax reform. Repeat. That's Randall Bauer. Let me say that again. He wrote, this is the guy Jim Hendren has picked to advise the task force, quote, tax cuts are not the same as tax reform. I hate being right. I really do. This is one of those times. It's because it's really frustrating. It's frustrating how little they respect the base, how they count on you never finding out what they're really doing in your name. And in this case, he's hired a tax and spend liberal that's got a Twitter feed that looks like something Bernie Sanders would write. And he is a Democrat. I'll prove to you he's a Democrat here in a minute. And not only did he serve under a Democrat administration, we'll look at his campaign finance contributions here in just a minute. Not that scares Asa Hutchinson, because his own chief of staff down at the Marble Palace, Allison Williams, is in fact a Democrat. Tax cuts are not the same as tax reform. Randy Bauer. That's who this guy is. That's who's going to be advising our path forward.
He clearly doesn't know what the word reform means, because the word reform, by definition, means make changes in something, typically a social, political, or economic institution or practice, in order to improve it. A tax cut can be a tax reform.
Yeah.
They are not exclusive of one another.
Thank you. But he doesn't want to hear that. I mean, he's taking this liberal line. I'm sure this guy loves the Huffington Post and Slate.com and places like that.
His tax reforms looks more like tax shifts.
Yeah, tax shifts or maybe tax increases, net tax increases when it all said and done. I mean, the fact of the matter is Arkansas is one of the highest tax states around. And we've had high taxes for a long time. And we have, it takes $7,000, almost $8,000 per person to run our government, when it takes $5,000 to run Texas, Oklahoma, and the ones around us. Now, you're telling me that that's acceptable? Come on. I mean, look, I have, maybe I'm wrong here. I have been under the illusion that Senator Jim Hendren and their ilk wake up every day and actually believe that they are conservatives, and I'm just an extreme right-wing guy. But they're conservatives. I'm not so sure anymore. I think now this is just intentional deception. I mean, why should I be surprised? But how are we supposed to think anything else? Do these guys, here's an honest question, do these guys wake up every day okay with the fact that they are Democrats disguising themselves as Republicans? Is that really where we are now? Where they are just that? They believe that they just want the power and they're going to use... somebody correct. I hope I'm wrong here. What's the next tweet? Let's look at these gems. This genius decision. By the way, this is why to counteract the worst motives that I'm assuming here with Jim Hendren and others waking up every morning, I would just say, if Jim Hendren ever wants higher office, this was a stupid thing to do politically. This is your guy. A guy who says that Trump is dark and Obama is light. This is the guy you're going to bring into Arkansas. Randy Bauer claims that Donald Trump has blocked him on Twitter. Quote, I've also been blocked by Trump on Twitter. That is so presidential of him. That's that a guy. Okay, all right. I'm sure his tax advice is sound, though. I'm sure we're going to want to follow that. Next tweet. See the graphic. Tax cuts don't reduce the debt. Repeat. Okay, so now we have Randy Bauer latching onto this idea. I'm sure when they score any kind of tax cut bill, they don't want to do it dynamic scoring. They want to use static scoring. They don't want to admit that this might actually increase productivity, increase voluntary cooperation, make GDP grow, and therefore the tax base increase. Next tweet. The U.S. cannot afford to take on this level of additional debt. Now he's attacking the Trump tax reform plan. Now all of a sudden, this guy's a Democrat, by the way. We've hired a Democrat. Just so you know, Jim Hendren has hired a Democrat to consult with on tax policy. And all they can do is now they're worried about the debt. Now they're actually worried about the debt. They didn't care about the debt before, but now they are. Good thing Arkansas has that balanced budget amendment, so we could cut and we'd have to cut the size of government, right? Next tweet. On taxes, senators should heed their own prior debt warnings. Again, same hypocrisy. Keep going. What's next? Okay, now here are his retweets. These are the tweets that Randy Bauer, consultant for the state of Arkansas, hired by Jim Hendren with your taxpayer dollars. These are the tweets that he's retweeted. Trump's plan to cut the corporate tax rate could result in a net budget deficit of $1.86 trillion over 10 years. All right, let's stop right there. Arkansas desperately needs our corporate tax rate slashed, if not outright eliminated. Do you think Randall Bauer is going to be a fan of that idea? No. I mean, if cutting the corporate tax rate is bad nationally, I'm sure cutting it here in the state is just as bad. Next tweet. Another retweet. If we take the easy way out listen to this. This is crazy. He retweeted this. This is how you know it's a farce. If we take the easy way out with budget-busting tax cuts, we'll end up with a massive tax bill for future generations. Well, that's all she wrote, folks. That's all she wrote. Let's pack it up. Let's all go home. Any hope that you had for tax cuts, for real tax reform out of this task force, once again, let me just share something with you. Back when Conduit was exposing Senator Hendren's task force on health care and telling you that it was a joke, that they weren't going to end Obamacare and doing all that, there was an enormous amount of criticism, an enormous amount of heat, if you will, that was being directed by the establishment towards this program, towards Conduit and everything else. And I will tell you that the exact same thing, it hasn't been since that moment that it has been as bad as it is now with the pressure and the heat and the criticism and everything else, because once again, I'm doing the same thing that I did then. Conduit's doing the same thing that they did, which is tell the people what's really going on, tell people what the task force is really about, and here, once again, we have the same thing happening. If we take the easy way out with budget-busting tax cuts, we'll end up with a massive tax bill for future generations. Next tweet. I'm going to get through all of these. There are thousands more. Oh, gosh. So he's also an anti-gun radical. Not only, this guy is a Democrat in every shape or form. He's putting out the statistics about how there are thousands more who have died from domestic gun violence than Muslim terrorism. Can we get our priorities straight? Talking about the tragedy in Las Vegas. Next tweet. He actually tweeted that. Here's a retweet. WTF. Republicans want to legalize silencers. I mean, how is that not a piggyback off of the insane comments that Hillary Clinton made about the NFL and silencers? That ridiculous comment. Do you remember how stupid that was? Well, here is Randall Bauer, the guy Jim Hendren hired to consult us on taxes that we're paying, I don't know, like $300,000 to, buying into the Hillary Clinton madness. Next tweet. He retweeted somebody named Adriana on Twitter that cites a study that Medicaid expansion in California is associated with an 11% reduction in the number of payday loans taken out each month. That's right. Welfare programs are they're making people so advantaged that they no longer have to take out payday loans. So presumably he's a huge fan of Obamacare as well. Next tweet. We have any more? Randy Bauer, tragic, and it highlights how cuts in service can directly impact people's lives. I've made state budget cuts. There are consequences. Wonder if we'll be making state budget cuts in the state of Arkansas. I guess not. And he was retweeting about a 19-year-old abused girl who is now suing the state of Iowa for negligence. Any more tweets? No more tweets. So we have this article, but we're going to run out of time here. Before we go, Joe, can we see his contributions to Democrats? I just want to solidify in this first segment, okay? This guy is a Democrat, period. Here it is. Here are his political donations. Now, assuming that this is the same Randy or Randall Bauer who lives in Iowa or used to live in Iowa, I'm pretty sure this is the same guy. But regardless, the tweets are enough alone. But here we go. And this is not all of them. Not all of them. But, you know, he's given $100 to a Democrat senator, $500 to another Democrat, $250. This is back in 2016 he was making these donations to Iowa Democrats. Like $250, another $250, another $100, another $100. This guy donates to the Democrat Party. Ladies and gentlemen, the guy that Jim Hendren hired to advise us on taxes donates to the Democrats. He is a Democrat. He's a flaming liberal. We're going to take a break. It's amazing that we were talking about this yesterday, and now here we're talking about it again with new information. It's not a coincidence, but it certainly wasn't planned. We have to go back in a moment.